Hi, everybody, and welcome to SA Rugby Magazine. I'm Kevin Ferguson, and I've got Scott Gibbs. Scotty, great to see you again, and really looking forward to seeing you on the 15th when I fly over to London, and we're going to definitely the Wales game.
Are
We
we?
may, yeah.
Wow, I
Um,
should be so lucky.
yeah. Well, you know what Caroline Street's like on a Friday night. I thought we'd start off there and see where the weekend takes us.
Oh, please, please, no.
How have you been?
Yeah, I've been fine. Yeah. I mean, it's autumn. The weather's good here. It looks pretty settled for the next couple of weeks. So hopefully we have some dry playing conditions underfoot, which will be
Yeah,
helpful, certainly for the
yeah,
Northern Hemisphere teams.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's what we want to talk about is the autumn tests. And now, normally in a world that was so dominated by Southern Hemisphere rugby, it's uh, it's quite amazing that the conversation will probably roll into how the Southern Hemisphere teams are going to do and how many games they're going to lose. You know what? The questions I want to sort of get out of you today is, what are the Northern Hemisphere teams looking like? Who's got the most to win and or lose by these tests in both North and South? And who's going to do what? How many
But
games are Ireland going to win? How many games England, Wales, Scotland?
yeah, it's interesting. I think this time of the year, the Autumn Nations series is really the opportunity for the Northern Hemisphere to get those scalps, and historically they have done. I mean, Ireland have always done well during the autumn. You have to only go out back a few years where England have had some very good victories against Australia and New Zealand, etc. So
Yeah.
it's uh, it's this time of year, I guess, because of the Southern Hemisphere have had so much rugby, and it's kind of the tail end of their international season. Whereas it's the opposite here, where everybody's gearing up to the Autumn Nations in the build-up and the preparation to European Cup rugby and then into the Six Nations. So I dare say that I think we can just discount Ireland for 1 minute in the context that there's such a good culture, such a good system, incredibly well coached. We saw that during the winter series down in Pretoria and in Durban. So, I think it'll be business as usual for Ireland. Certainly as Andy Farrell transitions into taking some time off after the Six Nations now in preparation for the um, for the British and Irish
Australia.
Lions teams. I think maybe this is his last kind of foray this autumn, where he hands over the reins to Simon Easterby during the Six Nations. But I suppose more importantly, you asked the question, who's got most to lose or most to win. I think the pressure is firmly on Wales for sure, as you know that they're on this stretch of trying to find this elusive win, and they kick off their campaign against Fiji, then move on to Australia, and then the final game, um, final big test match be in South Africa. I guess the hope is that with a lot of the frontline starters coming back and bolstering the squad strength, Wales have a real opportunity now to restore some faith, and they'll have a keen eye this weekend on Scotland versus Fiji to see what type of opposition and what type of squad uh, the Fijians bring and what type of shape they're in, because certainly they'll be targeting at least two out of the three for getting a victory, and I think there's good odds and good money on them doing that, certainly against Fiji, and having a greater understanding, having been up against Australia this winter, um, with the strength. I think they're good value for two wins.
If you look at Ireland, for example, they'll be expecting to win all tests.
Well, hey, that's the benchmark that they set. I mean, you only have to look at the top of the URC. Is that Leinster again a 6 from 6? You know. it seems to be easy running for those. And of course, a big part of that Ireland squad is the Leinster dynamic.
Yeah.
So, listen, from an Irish perspective, they don't need any motivation. They're driven by excellence. That coaching setup is just first class. So it's business as usual for them. They'll be looking to get third gear, fourth gear, fifth gear, sixth into overdrive, and certainly trying to create another level or another paradigm of attacking rugby coupled with their defensive strengths. So
Hmm.
again, I haven't got to worry about Ireland. I think they're just a well-oiled machine, and it'll be business as usual for them. I suppose expectation probably lands at the foot of the England team. You know, narrow defeats in New Zealand this winter. Um, up against the biggest and the best. So there'll be a lot of expectation in Twickenham at this moment about how they take their game, how they move themselves forward.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at what you look at Ireland for, the Australia should be fairly easy. Argentina, maybe a little bit more difficult, and Fiji, their big test is against New Zealand, with all respect to the three teams I mentioned earlier. And they'll be favorites for that game. I guess we'll get a bit of insight into form this weekend when England host New Zealand. And that one to me is an incredibly tough one to look at from a betting proposition and from a pundit's point of view, just to see who's going to win. The thing that interests me is the 6-10 favoritism that's being shown for New Zealand, and I just don't know where that's coming from.
Yeah, listen, they had a pretty convincing win, run out against Japan last week. But of course, we're not, Japan are not really in the conversation when it comes up against, put in a difficult opposition together. So that's just getting your systems and your patterns right. So they know that when they come to Twickenham, RFU headquarters, 82,500 capacity this weekend. It's going to be the bellwether, and that'll set the tone for Borthwick's men for sure. They have some key injuries, at halfback, but the fact is that from the Premiership perspective, everyone has been playing lights out. So he's got a full complement, full squad of players to go at. Selection seems to be more settled nowadays as well, so that gives the team and the squad great comfort in the direction of what they want to play. And also they will have gone through the both test matches, seen where they can make improvements. But I think it's all about trying to find rhythm and momentum again for England, and I think they'll do that quite easily. So this weekend will be an amazing insight as to what the tempo looks like for this Autumn Nations.
And what do you think of England's second row?
Well, unfortunately, the Leicester lock is injured. I watched him over the last couple of weeks. Name escapes me for a second. Sorry. But the fact is, they got plenty of depth across the park. That's the great thing about England. And at the moment, there's so many of the kind of, if you look at the depth chart in all the positions from outside the top two selections, is that there's a lot of youth and there's a lot of talent coming through. So Borthwick's never been shy in trying to introduce some of the younger guns. So
Hmm.
it's going to be it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting, yeah. And I dare say that England for me will fancy Saturday for sure.
Yeah, look, I like the plus 3.5 points that they're getting from a handicap uh, point of view. The games in New Zealand were close. I think I think that the person that has the most to lose from a Southern Hemisphere point of view is Scott Robinson. Obviously, still under the microscope as he always will be in New Zealand. And I just don't know if they have the horses in the forwards to really to win more than two tests here. I think that it's going to be a tough tour for them. And of course, if they don't win, I mean, looking at one of the rugby shows in New Zealand, you had John Curran and Jeff Wilson talking about them winning all four tests. I think that is incredibly optimistic. So I think the
Yeah,
pressure Scott Robertson.
no, it certainly is. I mean, that's that's the nature of the job, is that all this expectation, which has been mulled over for many a years about who was going to take over, the fact that he was the anointed one, and yet we haven't seen anything from an All Black perspective that really demonstrates that he can take them to another level.
I think a lot of that, Scott's probably down to the horses in the stable. He's probably
Yeah,
coming
that's
in.
it. Yeah. And we always talk about pieces and weapons and systems and so on and so forth. It's just that they haven't found quite a rhythm that resonates with what we historically understand and see from an All Black perspective. So, you know, listen, from a communication perspective, I think there's obviously there's a good feeling in the camp. They like the direction of where the team's going, but I think there's been so much catch up from the rest of the world, and certainly in the northern hemisphere, is that you know there's a lot of guys playing at a very high level at the moment, and there's so much depth in that England squad. There'll be a lot of confidence, and I don't think that the All Blacks and the jersey really matter so much anymore, especially when it comes up against England, because at home they should be out and out favourites. They have a style of play, and they have a depth to their understanding of what Borthwick likes to see that I think is only going to accentuate through this autumn test series and then permeate into the Six Nations.
No, I get what you're saying. What the only thing that considers the main thing that bothers me is Mahler's comments on Twitter about the hacker.
Yeah, well, some people just can't help themselves, and I know you're a big advocate, don't poke the bear type of thing, but this is when you look at rugby history, and when you look at what it represents, and also the heritage that remains, is that a lot of people go and watch the All Blacks. They pay the ticket money because that's what they want to see. They want to see the haka. It's part of who they are. So
Tradition, God's sakes.
yeah, that's right. Oh God, what are we without tradition? Certainly from a rugby union perspective, tradition is a huge part of it. It's what it's
Well,
what makes it's what really makes people fall in love with the Springboks. It's the tradition and the way that they represent the jersey. You know,
absolutely. I believe he deleted his tweets. I think he may have closed his account. But what an idiot. I mean, sorry. Let's call it what it
well,
what,
I mean, listen, this is your friend Rick Marler we're talking about.
I
For
did
those
call
that don't know, yeah, there was a faux pas earlier in the
I
year where, yeah,
remember.
I thought you were talking about Rick Parfitt for 1 minute.
Let's
The
call
late
him
great
Dick
status
Mauler
quo
because
guitarist.
what a dick thing to say. I mean, I don't
Well,
get it.
listen, in your words, yeah, it's a dick move, but I mean, he likes to be kind of controversial and so on, and you know, this is something that you can expect in nowadays with social media, is that sometimes there's a little bit of deafness, tone deafness when it comes to the appreciation of what's ahead of you, and certainly, preparation, focus is a huge part of how you lead yourself into a test match.
And
And these things can be misconstrued and just taken out of context. That said, I'm not decrying it for a moment, but the fact is that what we love about rugby union and what we love about the Springboks, and more so the All Blacks, is the tradition and what that heritage means to us as a rugby nation, a rugby
Absolutely.
loving nation. Yeah.
Yeah. And what have you ever been in a team where one of your teammates has done something stupid like throw gasoline on the fire and inflamed and given an opponent um a psych a more motivation than they should have? Have you ever has that ever happened in your career?
No, not really. I mean, listen, I think you have to respect the rugby landscape. Even from an amateur perspective, there's a lot of fine traditions that we like to keep around, which is great. But when you're up against the biggest and the best, you kind of want to keep your powder dry and your mouth shut,
Yeah,
and you want your own personal and team performances talking the walk and walking the talk,
on
on
the
match
field.
day. So,
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
listen, I think this is water off the back for the All Blacks. This is no distraction for them. They'll be primarily focused, certainly on Saturday, you know, making a good account for themselves. But it's going to be difficult because whatever way you look at it, Twickenham is not an easy place to play. I mean, it is a cauldron of Northern Hemisphere rugby. England are in great shape. There's a lot of good continuity. There's a lot of
Mm,
positivity about the direction of travel for them. So I think they'll be hugely optimistic about putting it together. And also, England are a physical, abrasive, very well conditioned side. Got lots of good communication at halfback, a lot of penetration, a lot of threats in the midfield. They got weapons all over the field, so they can hurt you if you are not 100% focused. And that's
yeah.
that's what Robinson's will be articulating to his team, is about, let's stick to our game plan. We know exactly what we need to be doing. But the fact is, we got to be disciplined. We got to be error free, because you will get punished in Twickenham if you were sloppy.
Okay, let's get on to these Springboks. I mean, last week the team was announced. We put it up on SA Rugby. We had 250,000 page views on a Sunday. Never happened before, other than during a World Cup, which to me talks about the current sort of euphoria still in South Africa over the World Cup champs. Um, they've been World Cup champions now for 5 years. Rassie can do no wrong. Even with injuries, they've just spoiled for choice. And some of those injuries on omissions made to the team, it was, I wouldn't say we use the word controversial, but surprising. Some people would wanted certain players in the side, and those players are now in the side because fate sort of sometimes involves itself and sorts things out. So those players are now in the side. BOKS looking strong. I think Rassie is so comfortable. Um,
Well, the old adage is energy breeds energy, success breeds success. So, the fact is that the Springbok rugby public are just salivating. They want to see more of the Springboks. They want to see them in action. Um, you know, and isn't that what is great about their success of late, or over the last couple of years, is that the dominance of his own ability to keep the Springboks fresh, current, relevant, is something to behold.
yeah, it's when I look at it, I'd be shocked if we lost one game on tour. I think that we will be favorites for all three games. Um, and I don't see us losing a game, but I really don't. There's
Well,
nothing
no,
that
because you get the feeling that they're constantly reinventing themselves, and the fact
yeah,
is that, because over the last 4 or 5 months of Springbok rugby, there's been there's been a lot of interchange, some forced through injury, some through opportunity and great play, and so on and so forth. Is that he always seems to feel very comfortable in whatever 23 picks. And the fact
yeah,
is that is just great management, isn't it? Because everybody understands their roles, stick to their roles.
And no one's
Um,
and no one's guaranteed. You know, it's one of the things I got from the interview watching with Andre Pollard on that UK podcast was, him talking about Rassi. It's quite interesting. Is, no one's guaranteed no one's guaranteed going to the next World Cup. So there's a healthy competition when you've got that much depth as well. The guys are sharp.
well, there's no competitive anxiety there anymore because, everybody's kept on their toes. Everybody has to, stay in line and, manage their own expectations. Yes, we understand there's a handful of players that are key to the Springboks doing well, just because of their leadership on the field. And you talk about Sia and you talk about Eben in that regard, but the fact is, the rest are not supporting casts.
No.
They are what makes this recipe work. So you're right. I think they'll go into it. Listen, I think their opener up in Murrayfield, providing the weather is in great shape because Murrayfield is one of the greatest venues to play rugby because the turf is just great for football. So I think Scotland will be hoping that there is some type of inclement weather because they'll feel very comfortable and confident in the context that their Glasgow Warriors side went to Pretoria and brought home the URC trophy. So they'll be they'll be one under no illusion that it's going to be an enormous task, but they'll be confident that they can match them in many of the areas, the effort areas and the contact areas and the abrasive areas. And I think, you know, you look at someone like Finn Russell, who
Yeah.
probably has a greater effect on the outcome depending on his disposition and temperament on the day and what he tries. Because you know that he only can play one way in the field that his control and his ability to unlock defenses as a number 10 is probably that's what sets him apart from any of the other tens in the world. So if he has a great afternoon, then you know that the threat is real.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. He's great. On with the right temperament on the right day, he's a game changer for sure.
Yeah, that's it. Listen, and he can go horribly wrong because he does try things, and that's what's beautifully electric about the way that he plays. And I mean, his form of late with Bath again has been just imperious. So they'll be confident. Yeah, and listen, I think the Springboks have they have a tough couple of games ahead of them, which is good because this is
Yeah.
what Springbok they don't want to come over and just be on tour for tour's sake. There's still a
No,
lot at stake. There's still a lot at stake, and if you look at Scotland as game one, it's not going to be easy. So the Springboks will have to be, primarily focus on exactly what they can do and what they do on international game day. Then they have to go to Twickenham. And I think that could be the game of this autumn series, really.
mm,
And
yeah.
then they finish off in Cardiff, which, as we know, it's for them it's been a happy hunting ground, where they've just been able to put you know a considerable amount of points on the scoreboard quite easily over the last couple of years. So this is a good couple of weeks if you're a Springbok fan because they're going to be up against some stubborn opposition.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I
So
think
I
that
no, I'm excited. I tell you the one thing that is disappointing from this end of the continent is the rugby is not on terrestrial TV, so it's behind the paywall, if you understand. So
yeah, of
there's
course.
there's not a lot of buzz. There's not a lot of talk about this autumn series unless you subscribe to the channel.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's
so with that
that's
in
difficult.
mind, you still feel if you're here in Wales, you still feel there's a little bit of apathy. That's nothing much is going on.
Yeah.
There's not really many eyeballs on the URC. And again, if you subscribe to the channel that is transmitting, then you get obviously the full complement of the Gallagher Premiership, and you get to see all the international stars on show. So that's a little bit disappointing, because the man on the street will probably, November's here. He'd be like, "Is there any rugby on?"
Well, I think you'll know on the 23rd, on that Saturday, which is the only, because Wales play the opening two games on a Sunday, which is unusual. But
Well, I say unusual, but it's not ideal if you're a Welsh rugby fan, because Sunday's historically not a great day to go out and watch footy.
no,
Um, you know,
it's a recovery day from Caroline Street and a few pints, isn't
yeah, that's it. Yeah, chicken
it?
curry off the floor, as they say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No one wants to be recovering on the Monday. But
Well, a good thing, I'll distract slightly, is that if we look forward to the Six Nations in 2025. The schedule now has been a lot kinder to all of the teams. So there's no football on Sunday, which is great for those teams, and also for the cities hosting, because
yeah,
at least then it's great for the GDP, and it's great it'll be a better fan experience, because let's face it, nobody likes going out and watching footy on a Sunday.
no, no, certainly not me. So let's we're gonna have a lot more shows now around the autumn tour, and I'm looking forward to seeing you, mate. A prediction for New Zealand, England, for our
Um,
fans out, the two of them.
Yeah, listen, I'm kind of I'm bullish. I'm bullish on England. I'm bullish on their trajectory. Um, and whilst you know if you're a pure out and out English fan, you might not be 100% convinced with the direction of play and the comfort that Borthwick provides you. But the fact is that they do have pieces and weapons, and they seem to be knitting together. There seems to be more of a harmony and an understanding of the style of play that they want to achieve. And we've seen plenty of evidence of that over the Southern Hemisphere winter. I think this is a great opportunity for Borthwick to take it another level and beyond. And hopefully we get to see more of an array of the depth of English talent on show. So I'm gonna go for an England win this weekend.
So an outright win. I'm gonna take the comfort of the 3.5 points that's on offer. I do think that New Zealand just don't have. I think that from a betting proposition, Scott, what we're seeing is uh, brand bias. The All Black brand. It's the All Blacks versus England, so they're favorites.
And you know what, Kev? That's the intangible in this algorithmic betting thing, is that you can look at all of the history, you can throw in the permutations of the weather and all the data points. And I think you're right. The brand equity now is talking, and
Yeah,
only because it's the silver fern.
yeah. So for me, well said, Scott. For me, I've got to take the 3.5 points, points, and and back England to not lose by 4 more points. In fact, if they win, I win my bet. So I'll be betting on plus 3.5 with England. Um, and yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the weather's doing in London. I'll check
Well, it
before I
looks
make my bet, obviously.
no. Listen, I think we benefited from a bit of a low front, that the weather seems to be calm. So it's typically autumn. There's no rain in the air, so I don't foresee there'll be some hue, that dampness on Twickenham on Saturday. So I think the ball will be nice and tacky from a catch and pass point of view. So conditions will be favourable this weekend. I haven't got a clue what it's going to be like in Edinburgh this Saturday. Haven't really looked, because that could change on like a change on a knife edge.
I
So
was gonna say, isn't it, don't we just always say the weather in England, Scotland's gonna be shit?
yeah, that's right.
And
Yeah,
that's a
yeah.
safe
Like
bet.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Let me ask you one more question and let's finish up on this, Scott. How much pressure is there on Australia with the British and Irish Lions tour coming to perform well? Because as you know, we chatted over the phone a few times, and we both, well, certainly me, I'm very concerned from a if I'm a British and Irish Lions fan. Yeah, Australia is a wonderful place to go and visit. I've been there many times, as have you. It's beautiful. I like the people, like the food. You know, there's always beer on tap, so can't fault the place. But would you want to be spending that money and going to watch a British and Irish Lions, a foregone British and Irish Lions tour result? So just how
You
much
know,
pressure is on
it,
Australia? And do
it
you think that,
listen, it's an interesting question, and I think let's put the Australian rugby situation and whether they are tepid or kind of boiling over at the moment. The fact is, from an economic standpoint, and if you're a true British and Irish Lions fan or a rugby fan, you may be thinking that you would just you know roll the dice and keep your investment rolling towards the World Cup.
mm,
Double down because, as you say, it's a big ask. It's a long journey. Um, it's an expensive place to travel, and I'm not saying this from a cost saving perspective, but from a value proposition. Maybe you roll your investment into Rugby World Cup to Australia next time because, as you say, I think all points are leading towards a convincing
yeah,
series whitewash.
what,
Um,
yeah,
that's just a sign. And recent NRL signing Joseph Sualihi, who is a phenomenal player. I mean, one player is not going to change your fortunes overnight. So I think structurally Australia are in a bind at the moment, and Schmidt and his team need to find solutions, and they need to find them off season very fast. Because if they have a poor autumn nations, and what I mean by a poor autumn nations, if they lose two out of the 3 or 4 games that they play, then it's not that the questions are still going to be asked. It's like, well, how do we resurrect this during the off season and getting people in the right mindset and getting a getting a squad together that can really bolster their their chances for next summer's Lions tour. Because at the moment, I feel maybe the more nervous of the coaches will be Andy Farrell, thinking that he's got all this talent to assemble and put a 35-man squad, but the expectation is enormous because as you see it now, they'll be going for not only a series whitewash, they'll be wanting to go there and go unbeaten.
yeah,
So,
yeah, for
and I
sure.
know that, listen, things can change in rugby, in a week, in a month, in 6 months. But I think from a rugby point of view and a standpoint on that point is that we all want to see a stronger Australia
Yes, for sure.
for the
Absolutely.
health of world rugby, for the health of the rankings, and also for a competitive Lion series next summer.
So, Scotty, I want to thank you very much for being a guest again. Always love chatting to you. Looking forward to seeing you on the 15th. And stay warm and look forward to it, man.